Well, good evening, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be. My name is GAVIN-GRENVILLE WOOD. Welcome to Under the Hat. We are in the first week of May, almost the second week in May, actually. Time has flown by, and I'm very excited to spend an hour tonight on my own. Stuart's not with us, with one of the world's most renowned coaches and best coaches, actually, having seen much of how this guy teaches and the way that he does things and the successes that he has had. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Sean Hogan to the show. Welcome, Sean. Thanks very much for spending the time, because I know that you would normally be teaching at this point, but great that you can join us this afternoon. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Gavin, and it's a pleasure to join you. Everybody from around the world that's watching, and maybe perhaps they can watch it afterward if they're currently out and about or on the lesson tee. And appreciate all the praises. I really feel in my life that I've been fortunate with the opportunities that I've been given. Try to make the most of them, and certainly people like yourself and David and the things you do inspire me. So really glad to be here.
Absolutely. The feeling's mutual, Sean. And I know I've learned so much from you. I've recently done my certification as well. And you've been such a huge part of the company's education platform for so many years. You're basically the stalwart with David of our instructor committee. So everything new and exciting and vibrant that we want to push through has to go through you as well. So it's certainly an exciting journey, and the education, of course, is evolving, isn't it? So how, just get a little bit of a backstory, to be fair, Sean, and I don't want you to go into too much of a life history perhaps, but you know, I'm keen to find out the journey that you've taken, because I think that's really valuable, kind of understanding the graft that you've put in that has led to who you are today as a person and as a coach, and, you know, enjoying the successes that you are as a coach right now. So, I mean, where did it all start for you?
I think, Gavin, for me personally, I was always a bit of an outdoor person and sportsman. Growing up in Ireland, parents moved to a county just south of Dublin, right next to a golf course. And like most players, say back in the early to mid 80s, went out and caddied and just became part of the fabric of the club in terms of their junior programs. Really appreciative of the club's effort with the junior committee and supporting the juniors, and as you do all around the UK and Ireland in terms of club events, county events, regional and national. So I sort of fell in love with the game, kept up some other sports until about, say, 15, 16, and then started to make our national squad in the under 18s and under 22s, and was very fortunate, you know, to travel around Europe and play in some European boys and youth events, and very fortunate with the timing. I mean, Padraig Harrington, Paul McGinley, Darren Clark, got to play with them all at various times on our teams. And so it was really a dream come true when I look back at it. So that was very influential for me. And in terms of maybe instruction, you know, a significant figure for me was our professional club in Greystones, which, you know, Paul Dunn's a current member of, European Tour winner, Walker Cup player. So we've had some great, you know, players come through the club, but the pro there at the time was sort of a Kevin Daly. He was a disciple, if you will, really a close apprentice of John Jacobs, and did his apprenticeship in the UK and then came to Ireland. And so I sort of had a front row seat when I'd be on the lesson tee, sort of watching Kevin give lessons, and sort of the simplicity. I'd ask a lot of questions, even as a young teenager, And obviously, look, back in that time, and we certainly owe a lot to John Jacobs, but sort of understanding what the ball was doing and then tying it back to one's setup and things like that. And so it was amazing how quickly Kevin could get a player, be it one of our members, so to speak, getting them hitting it better pretty quickly, and turning a slice into less of a slice, if you will, or a straighter shot, or even a draw. And I was like, okay, that sort of tweaked my interest in that avenue as I was playing as well. And fast forwarding, fortunate to get a scholarship out to the States, down in South Florida and Tampa, and would come up to our Leadbetter facility then in the late 80s, early 90s at Lake Nona in Orlando. And that was my first sort of meeting with David. And it was an interesting meeting. I was having a lesson with Simon Holmes at the time, who was one of David's associates, and David walked in with Nick Faldo in tow. So they sat down behind four of us, members of the USF team, and watched our lesson. So I got it was really nice to meet him at the time, and Faldo, obviously in the midst of his run to 6 majors and everything else he accomplished. So it was that really, as call it tipping points or moments of inspiration, were definitely big for me. I used to go out to, say, the Irish Open with some of my mates there at the club in Ireland, and go out and watch Seve and Langer and Lyle and Woosnam and Ola Thabal. So, my parents were very supportive of me in that regard. They gave me a lot of freedom, and I think I made the most of it. And fortunately, I found golf and it found me. And so here we are. And so, yeah, it's been a really amazing journey, and a lot of people to thank along the way, and inspirations. And so, yeah, it's been a fun journey to this point.
No, that does sound exciting. I mean, I want to know really or dissect what the keys are to your success. What you've had to go through, kind of what you've learned, what's made you into Sean Hogan in 2021. I think that's a really interesting story, so that coaches can understand what they've got to go through, and understand as well, you're referencing back in the 80s and stuff. I mean, the journey to becoming a great coach doesn't happen overnight, does it?
No, it was an interesting time. I first saw my swing, if I recall, national training. I was 15 or 16. I don't think I wanted to see it after I saw it. And it was interesting, you sort of, even going back to lessons that David would have with Nick Price, even Nick Price told us they'd wait for the latest edition back in Zimbabwe of the Golf Digest to arrive at the club, and they'd all the juniors and huddle around and look at the various pictures of Nicholas and what have you, and sort of imitate. And so I guess imitation for those players, the greatest form of flattery. And so for me as a teacher on my journey, I think maybe not having all the technology that's present today, back as a younger player, younger teacher, and understanding, say, ball flight principles that were then, and not saying that, hey, TrackMan maybe clarified some things along the way, but it was interesting getting all that information, or having to decipher that information, and how, shall we say, how you had to actually look at, the ball flight, the divot, the contact, the sound, and sort of come up with you had to sort of figure things out. You had to be a bit of a detective without all the high speed stuff. So that helped me enormously. David was big on us giving lessons. I know in my early days as an apprentice back in the 90s, especially in Austria, a lot of beginners back then in Germany, Austria, Switzerland. And so that was a very humbling experience, having to show people what a golf course looked like. I mean, people that were very equipped to go down double black diamond slopes in the wintertime, but knew nothing about golf. And so that was really, I think that helped me a lot. And technology has certainly helped us as teachers. But I think it, you know, going back organically and thinking of some of the key moments for me, I think, you know, watching David, whether it was working with the Faldos, the Prices, yet he could have a 4 to 6 person group of, you know, sort of club level golfers, making that connection to them, watching them play, say 3-4 holes, listening to them, and then coming up with a little plan for each player that was unique to them, their goals, their time available to play and practice. And so that sort of skill set that he had, that ability to connect, you know, with a Faldo or a Price or an Ernie Els, and then switch off and then connect with a club golfer that just wants to hit it more solidly, more consistent, slice it less, hole a few more putts, chip a little closer. So I sort of saw the gamut and was thrown into the fire pit, if you will, going to Austria. I had 3 years there in Austria, and it really was transformational for me in terms of, you know, learning how to teach new golfers, people that maybe weren't athletically equipped, didn't have any exposure to the game. You know, in Ireland there, Gavin, and a lot of people in the British Isles, golf is sort of a people sport. You know, you go up to Scotland and you go to the Ayrshire coast there, and I mean, it's like, you know, there's golf courses every block. And so golf is almost in our blood. But I think for me as a young instructor, just watching David, you know, reading some of, say, John Jacobs' books and how he would explain the purpose of the golf swing. And then, you know, those moments and being able to then, in my own way, develop a sort of an approach in my lessons where making that person or persons in front of me the most important people at that moment, as I'm teaching, and think of their goals and their abilities and what have you, and coming up with a very clear plan so that they felt like, okay, I've got their interests at heart and I've got a plan. And sometimes you have to be flexible, but identifying a couple of key things that can make a big difference. I mean, it's like going to the doctors, you know, if we're not feeling good, you want them to give us a bit of clarity as to why we're feeling the way we are, and then come up with a plan to get us back feeling, you know, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And so I think David was huge for me in that regard. The positivity that he exudes in his lessons and the ways he's able to get the message home. And so, you know, I obviously spent 10 years assisting him, and that was a huge apprenticeship, probably 8 years too many, as I said to him, because we like to rotate players through, but we dovetailed off each other pretty nicely. And he was, you know, very gracious in his time and explanations when we'd work with players, when I'd have certain questions about sort of his teaching style. So, and met a lot of great teachers along the way at the various seminars. I think some of the key things for me as a young instructor was going to these seminars and the PGA shows and listening to the instructors that had blazed trails, whether it was sitting at Augusta. My first year there at Augusta, I got a half hour in a rain delay sitting with Butch Harmon. And I briefly, you know, he was very willing to tell me his sort of story in terms of what he focused on with Tiger and why it worked. And yeah, it was pretty amazing. I was like, you know, it's just some of these moments I look back at. I mean, we talked for a half hour and I just listened and made some notes later, and that was huge. And so, yeah, just various moments along the way. I think for young instructors, being patient. I think it's not a bad thing to try to do a bit of everything in the business as well. I think coming through a club, learning to interact with the members, learning and understanding a bit of the operations of the club, even with a greenskeeper, and there's so many ways you can just enhance your overall perspective of the game, and then translate that perspective into a player's plan. And so just lots of memories along the way. But I'd say for me, you know, not having all the technology on the front end now, and I look back, has certainly made me be a more patient teacher, not trying to fit students into a certain method or mold, and really considering who they are, as I say, their goals, they're really seeing their abilities, going out and playing a few holes with them. I mean, how many of us as teachers spend that extra half hour to an hour with a client? That's something, you know, that's really helped me over the recent, certainly half decade, is spending a lot more time with first-time clients, going out on the course, getting to know them, let them do the talking, and then you can do the evaluating without them really feeling, you know, like you've overburdened them with technology. And then choosing sort of those strategies you feel will best fit that client in front of you. You know, maybe they do need a little bit more technical explanation, or maybe it just needs to be more sort of feel type drills and what have you, and so forth and so on. So yeah, I think the industry's come a long way. I'm very fortunate, I think, having seen maybe the back end of the years where it was very driven by having to watch the players, watch the ball flight, not having much technology. And now we've kind of come all the way up to this very technologically driven industry where our players have, my goodness, I've got bunches of players have simulators in their home, TrackMans. They're able to send videos pretty much daily if they want to. I get numbers, I get, you know, foresight, quad numbers sent to me. And it's amazing. It almost is like, if you think too much about it, it can be overwhelming. But again, trying to really give the student a simple message that captures really the essence of where they need to go, the direction they need to go. So those have been some of the key points that have influenced me along the way.
I think it's really important, isn't it, to relate what you ultimately coach to what the student wants. And that's one thing that I've really noticed with David, that I thoroughly enjoy watching you both coach amateurs more than coaching proper players, because I just think that it's more real, you know, and the changes that you can make in relative short spaces of time are absolutely amazing sometimes. But I mean, I don't coach adults that often anymore, but I've never coached with a TrackMan. I've coached with a couple of devices here and there, but you know, having the ability to listen, to watch what the body and the club is doing, and then to watch what the ball is doing, I think is ground zero. And that's where you've got to start as a young coach, so that you start to understand the tendencies of certain things that happen and kind of tying all of that together. The use of technology is merely a luxury, isn't it? Otherwise, we fall into the trap of young coaches teaching students to numbers. You know, we all know that you can rack up some pretty strange numbers and hit some fairly decent shots, and sometimes it doesn't make any sense what TrackMan tells you, and so you start changing the numbers, and then all of a sudden, you know, the golfers' results and outcomes are not quite what they want. So, I mean, that's really what I take from that. I wanted to ask you on the back of that, Sean, is I'm fascinated to find out at what point you felt David trusted you to coach and to do what you do now.
Yeah, I don't think there was a particular moment. I think maybe in 2005, 2006, there was a point there where I actually remember this day very well. It was sort of pre-European desert run, pre-Florida swing. So we're getting up on the season, and and you know, I'd normally come in quite early. I'd prep the clients. Well, the clients on the tee included Lee Westwood, Justin Rose, Charles Howell, Aaron Badley. I mean, I was going down a list. There was 8 guys on the tee at once. And so David comes into the video room and he says, "Hey, have you got them all filmed?" I said, "Sure." And he says, "We got a little problem." he said, and I said, what's that? And he said, there's going to be 7 people offended as soon as I start working with the first one. So, or 7 egos dented. Yeah, we had, I just remember that it was about 2004 or 5. Lee was coming to us at the time. Ernie, we were working with him, but it was overwhelming, and they were all just so eager. So I think he gave me a little bit more, probably 15 years ago, out of necessity, really. I sort of had to, start sort of, using the notes that he previously had with those players, and then just, checking up on those with them in the video room. So I had their files, and I'd be looking at the videos and trying to, so then it and then it morphed into the PGA Tour obviously came out with stats and stuff. So I would, a lot of times when a player would come in, I would have their stats, their video done. As technologies came into the academy more and more, like TrackMan, I'd get that TrackMan data before he'd even see them. And so I was able to then, he would just look at me and say, what do you see? What's going on? And so pretty quickly I was able to tell him, look, this area from 150 to 200 is lacking. They're blocking it or what have you. I've gotten some feedback from them. So all of a sudden I started to see the picture a little clearer. And so I started to go on the road with them. We might have 6-8 players at one tournament, and we just sort of ham and egg it over, a Monday through Thursday until they went, and maybe through Friday or even Sunday in the majors. So that really was a scary proposition for me, because I really knew in majors what these guys were playing for. And, I think when I was on my Todd in 2008 with Trevor Immelman, when he won the Masters, that was a huge moment. I can't tell you how nervous I was for Trevor. And then, just watching a student, you know a student inside and out, and how hard they push and how hard they wanted, and grafting with them. And that was amazing to see the fruition of that work come through. And look, David had realized that many times before, but for me, that was a breakthrough moment. And he was very complimentary of the stuff that we did and reinforcing what theme he had set. So probably in the 05s, 06, so 15 or so years ago. And that sort of, that gave me a lot of confidence. I think, as you say, there's moments in your teaching career where you give a certain lesson. And I don't think the lesson has to be with an elite player, because I think young instructors, going back, I gave a lot of extra time to students. I gave a lot of free lessons. I worked with a lot of poor players, both in terms of skill level and just athletically, maybe not as talented as, some of the more talented. But I think you've got to teach poor players and teach juniors and get them improving. That's a huge confidence boost, because when you work with the best in the world, you kind of go for a ride on their coattails of motivation and inspiration there, Gavin. And they kind of pull you along, and you almost start to think outside the box. Okay. I remember one time Momentous Golf has this putting arc. And I know this sounds odd, but let's say take a Trevor Immelman and Charles Howell. When we worked with those guys, they had so much, they hit it from in to out, but they had so much shaft lean that they were always hitting down on their driver. And so I took a Momentous putting arc, and it had a slight in to out arc on it, and I cut it in half. And I remember putting the ball on the outside end of it. So Trevor had to come in. He sort of had to unload the club shallower, more from in to out. And I was like, and it worked like a charm. And even Butch saw me doing that and so you come up, you have to be creative. You have to think, okay, what, and technology helped me in that regard, and so that was huge for me, having see players do well. But even before that, teaching poor players, seeing smiles on faces, working with kids in camps, even going back to my days at Avila in Tampa, where it's really kid management. being a bit of a clown with the kids and the long drive contest at the end of the clinic, the long putt, the lob shot, and what have you. Those, as I say, going back to being a young instructor, you better do a bit of all of that, because when it comes time to, if you get the chance to teach a young player that maybe comes through the ranks and fulfill, their potential at the highest level, all of those things come into play. You've got to keep even the best players in the world. You got to keep them happy. You got to know what buttons to press when you need to be a bit tough on them and say, hey, you can do this. Let's just keep working through it. You can see the end of the light. You got to wear a lot of hats there, Gavin. And so, probably 05. That was, as I say, who are we going to start with and who are we going to offend? So that was a moment I won't forget.
No, that's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. I love hearing the stories about your journey and that victory of Trevor's. We had Mark Immelman on the show a few weeks ago, and he spoke about the weekend and what Trevor went through, and it was again fascinating insight into that, and the use of the momentous putting arc is it's brilliant. The creativity to do that, and at the end of the day, to have the balls to do that with the tour player. I mean, carnage could have ensued. I mean, we could have had injuries all over the place, but just fascinating and a great visual, I think, really for Trevor at that point. So no, that was brilliant. I tell you what we'll do now, folks. Let's go to a couple of questions. So Connor, let's go to you, mate. And evening. Hope you're well. Fire away.
Hey, Gavin, thanks a million. Sean, are you well?
Yes, Connor, it's great to see you, young man.
And you, how are you keeping?
Everything's good. Congratulations on your recent certification.
Oh, yeah, thanks a million. I'm delighted. I'm sitting here in the old mill, a house that you might know.
Oh, yes. Very fond memories there. So great stuff.
Yeah.
How's family? Everybody good?
Yeah, everyone's great, thank God. I don't want to take up the call on that, but just a question. I've recently started a new job in Blaine Row Golf Club. Mm-hmm. And because I was in Greystones for a couple of years, obviously where you grew up. But I was just wondering, do you have any tips on how to kind of like brand yourself, put yourself out there? Because I'm just trying to build a new lesson base now, obviously with the new clientele. So do you have any tips going forward on that?
Yeah, I would say there, Connor, first and foremost, with the membership, you get with the secretary. Obviously, there may be a committee member or two you might have to work with, but I would offer on a weekly basis. I would do something for the ladies, the men, and even the juniors, and sort of theme it where it may have, cover aspects of the game each week, sort of, anything from putting to green reading, chipping, bunker play, working through the bag, essentially, pitching, full swing, irons, fairway, it can be a fairway wood hybrid theme to it, all the way up into the driver. And so sort of capture a segment of the membership that's willing to come out, support you in the clinics, and then you'd be surprised, just helping them a little bit in that clinic can then lend itself for them coming there, Connor, to see you on an individual basis. You can even include, hey, if you want to, if one of the various reps in the country want to stop by as well, if you want to invite the Titleist rep or what have you, the Callaway rep, etc., have them come in for a club fitting session, and stagger, have a lineup of members in the day that are interested in getting, say, whatever, new wedges, a new putter, and so you just got to be creative in that regard. To some degree, hey, you don't have to give them in a 10-person clinic. You don't have to give them the full Monty, but just some really good fundamentals, and tidy up some key areas in that, say a 1-point type clinic, 1 or 2 points, something in the setup, something in their action. And as they go through that sort of theme with you, from short game, wedging, putting, all the way into full swing, hey, they may have really enjoyed that, and as I say, may want to get with you on a private basis then, and you can be a little bit more in depth with them at that point.
Okay, Fantastic. Thanks a million, Sean.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Oh, pleasure.
I think it's important as well, Connor, just to note that there aren't really any shortcuts to it. I mean, you have to go through your apprenticeship as a young coach. You know, you've basically done your certification. You know, it's foundational to a degree, and it really comes to life when you start properly coaching and depending on what you've learned to make a living. That's really important. But yeah, don't cut corners. Always look for opportunities to learn. Always look for opportunities to be creative. Like Sean was describing with Trevor Immelman. I mean, you know, just don't be scared to try stuff, but document it, review it, critically analyze what you do, and move forward. And I think in no time at all, you'll start to build a reputation within the people that you teach. You'll build a reputation within the club, and then it expands beyond that. You know, your biggest marketing tool at the end of the day is word of mouth. And you know, as soon as you start to show people what your abilities are, you know, the word will start to spread.
Sure, absolutely. Perfect. Thanks a million, Gavin.
Cool. Excellent, Connor. Good stuff. Sean, just before we go to the next question, I wanted to just dive into 2020 and 2021, and I'm fascinated, like so many are, with your recent work with Patrick. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I know you're having a great time. You know, you're traveling a lot, but it must be, I think, I've never met Patrick, but I've come to see the relationship that you guys have with him. And I think it's such an exciting journey for you and David, and you know, on behalf of everybody that's affiliated to the Academy, I think it's doing great things for us. So just, can you talk a little bit about what's kind of going on and, you know, how you see the future?
Sure. I think that firstly, you know, there's quite a good support system around Patrick with his wife, Justine, who we know was on the bag when he first won at the Wyndham Championship, I'm going to say back in 2012. So she's been a huge part of his team, if you will, both as his wife and caddy at that time back then. And so she reached out to David in 2019 there, Gavin, literally on a whim. David was headed to Tampa to the Valspar Championship, and you know, Patrick was at it really struggling, and that wasn't too long after his victory in the Masters. And so Kevin Kirk, who's done a phenomenal job with Patrick for many years, you know, they felt maybe having David come in and talk with Patrick and Kevin about what they were doing and maybe offer almost some consultancy. So that happened for that week. There really wasn't too much dialogue beyond that. David went to various events, you know, for the rest of 2019 and would see him and sort of check in. But Kevin pretty much continued to be involved at that point. And as I say, look, he's done an amazing job with all the success Patrick's had. But I think the reason they came to us after Winged Foot in 2020, on the Monday after Winged Foot, which was really surprising because after 2 rounds at Winged Foot, Patrick was leading. And so if you have a student coming to you and they're just about to win a major, you're wondering, why are they actually coming to you or wanting to change coach? But he said he was playing with too much house money at that time. He'd roll the dice, was basically aiming right of planet Earth and flipping it as much as his fast hands and amazing magic hands could. And sometimes it worked, and obviously the putting and chipping goes without saying. So he felt that there was too much reliance on timing in his swing. So the Monday after Winged Foot, he came down to our headquarters at Leadbetter ChampionsGate, and we got to going. Unfortunately, from that time, David, as we know, has had to have a couple of surgeries in regards to his feet. And so if he is listening or does listen, we wish him continued healing. And so I had to sort of fill in for certainly any of the travel upcoming, and that involved Wentworth and Dubai. And so we pretty much hit the ground running with him, which I'd never really done before, where you're sort of, okay, here's the things we're going to work on, but we went straight into tournament mode with him. And fortunately, you could start to see the signs. I mean, he was having, really top threes, top fives, top tens, came close in the race to Dubai by, I think, a shot, and really didn't play his best stuff. But there were definite signs that some of the changes that we'd made in terms of neutralizing his alignment, the amount of face change in his swing. If you look at some older swings, he's got a lot of hip twist and a lot of extension in the downswing in the back of his left wrist. So the face would get quite open. And so he'd really have to motor the hands close late. And so there was a lot of timing going on. So we just neutralized some areas there, and it seems to have stabilized things to this point. There's still a lot of work to be done. Old patterns are the old DNA is still in there, but it's a lot less prevalent. And we've seen some patches where he's absolutely flushed it. And I think you look at a player in the top 10 in the world, there's no doubting their motivation. Some of them are maybe more extrovert about it, but he's got a full motor to hit that top spot. So he's in the prime of his career. He pushes us as hard as we can be pushed, and we're trying to push him in that direction. He's bought into sort of the theme, and we just try to convey it to him with various drills. If you've watched some of the stuff we've been doing with him on the range, it's some basics like pivot drills, just doing some non-club swing drills with just the arm and body motion, and then introducing some ball pushing drills where the face is more stable. So he's very drill oriented, and I think those drills are a great way to convey feel to him. And his short game is just phenomenal. It really is. It's a sight to behold. I mean, you get him within 15 yards of the green, bunkers, difficult lies, and what have you. He's just got great creativity. So I would definitely say for any young teachers, get your younger juniors watching this player and explain to them the importance of their wedge game and putting. But it's been a good journey. As I say, he's very motivated, and we're delighted that he's looking to us to help him reach that top spot, if you will. And he puts in the grafting that he puts in is amazing. We get videos on the weeks we're not out there with him. We get videos from Houston. And as I say, he's got a great support team at home with Justine and her family. And he's really blessed with two beautiful kids. And I think he's 30 years of age. So, hey, he's a proven winner so far. He showed that he can Monday qualify and all the way up to being a major champion and multiple wins in between. He won this year, obviously out in Torrey. We're going to go there next month for the US Open. So some good vibes going back out to Cali. And hopefully those will, do him good. Certainly horses for certain courses, as we know. And he plays well on tough courses. He's good friends with Tiger. He speaks with Tiger a lot there, Gavin. And Tiger's really helped him, as we know, and the Justin Thomases who are willing to pick up the phone and sort of, keep Tiger motivated to come back and all the rest. But they've really gleaned a lot from his experiences and how focused he was in both his preparation for big events and having clarity and having the right sort of formula for them to achieve their success. So I think as I say, it's been about 7 months, but I would say we're on a good trajectory, and hopefully we can keep it going.
I love the story behind it. It's fascinating. I've got a spare 30 shillings actually, Sean. Do you recommend that I put all 30 shillings on him to win at Kiel Island next week?
Yes, I would put it all on black 27. So, I mean, look, again, it'll be Kiowa. It's going to be in spring. And we know South Carolina, a bit blustery in spring. He plays well on those winds. As I say, flights it well. So coming off a top 10 there at Wells Fargo last week, was 5 back of Rory. And yeah, so I think he's thereabouts, and we'll put some final polishing on it starting this coming Sunday in prep.
Excellent. Are you heading up to Kiowa?
Yes, I'll head up to Kiowa on Sunday. We'll have COVID testing, as every tour event, both in Europe and US, require for players and support personnel. We're all on the same boat. And then once we get COVID testing, we can get out on the course and get cracking. So I was there when Rory won. It's the most difficult course I've ever played, for sure. But will you do us a favor? Will you post a couple of pictures, maybe even a video? Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Be a pleasure. Be a pleasure.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Everybody would love to see that. It's everyone is really inspired by the journey that you guys are on with Patrick right now. So it feels good, looks good, and exciting stuff. Okay, I feel like we might run out of time, but we're going to rattle through some questions. We're going to go to Anthony, then to Steve, and then to Renee. So Anthony, over to you, pal. Seems to be the Irish contingent are in full force tonight.
Yeah, how's it going? Can you hear me? Hi, Sean. How you doing? Congratulations, good. Connor. Just a quick one there. Jimmy Kinsler was saying to me that I said, so you know a guy called Sean Hogan, he teaches Patrick Reed. Oh yeah, he'd be down at the club regularly, this kind of thing, you know. And I said, whatever happened to him? He said, oh, he went to America and he got his tour card and we never heard of him since. He stayed in America, never came home. So just wondering how true that is.
Yeah, no, the Kinsler family in Ireland, obviously, one of the brothers there was a Jimmy Kinsler. He played on the European Tour, and his brother, Sean Kinsler, my grandfather was godfather to his son. So I would go up to Skerries there, Anthony, probably on a monthly basis when I'd be in Dublin with my grandfather in my younger playing days. And we go up there and Jimmy would be at the club. And I got to meet Bobby years later. And we played, I think, we played on a couple of the junior Irish squads and some interprovincial stuff. But yeah, lovely lad. And I was maybe a year or two older and headed to the States. I got a scholarship over the phone from the coach there in Tampa at University of South Florida. So I was eager to get out of Ireland, and the States was the place to be. I actually, a funny story there. I played in the Irish Youths maybe a year or two before I graduated with Owen O'Connell and Darren Clark. And so they asked me what was I going to do. They were a year ahead of me, and they said, well, we're going to Wake Forest. And Owen obviously stayed there for his collegiate career. Darren, the coach, told Darren to leave after a semester and turn pro, and that was probably one of the best decisions Darren ever made. But yeah, so that was sort of the back in the day, and I think John McHenry was maybe the first of sort of maybe the Irish players at that time, some years older than me, but to come to the States. I know Paul McGinley went out to maybe San Diego State, but it was sort of a new thing and something exciting that you could, somebody was willing to pay for your education, which may not have been the case in Ireland at the time. And the weather factor was obviously key, but going back there to the Kinsler family, what a wonderful family there in Ireland. And obviously Skerries was a popular spot there for Jimmy and the family.
Yeah. Golf and Dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. And how are you doing? Are you where are you based?
I come from a golf and Dynasty as well. I'd rather not say now, put myself under too much pressure.
That's great. I mean, it's
I know Darren and Paul and all the lads very well. I would have played a lot of golf with them over the years.
Yes.
Like you said, the likes of Owen O'Connell and John McHenry and all these guys like around your era, they never made it as such. And then along came Paul, Porrick, Darren, and next thing all of a sudden, it was just incredible boost to Ireland.
Yeah, it is. Isn't it amazing? You have these tipping points where somebody in a country just does something amazing. And obviously Padraig was, I played with him in his first home international for the boys in Kilmarnock Brassy. I mean, he was the smallest, the shortest, definitely the best game inside 100. But my goodness, you know, once he won that first major, the doors of belief that he opened with the Gray McDowells, and the odd thing was you would have put the house on Darren to maybe be the first player to do that, given his ball striking, you know, prowess. But sure enough, I mean, the grafting that he put in with Bob Torrance there, Padraig was amazing, and obviously the short game was there when he needed it. And so a great run of play for the Irish golfers, certainly all the way. And Rory, obviously, just sort of piggybacking on top of their success. So amazing for such a small island that we've had such success up to this point over the last 2 decades.
How is your game now?
Go ahead.
I was just saying, how is your game now? You know, going from like player to coach.
No, we don't talk about my game, my friend. Okay, so my game is 9 holes with my wife and son on the odd occasion, and taking some students over to Ireland to play casual golf. So I was very fortunate. Like I got to play with Mickelson over here collegiately at some events. I got to play with Duval. So my 10 years of, I'd say, very competitive golf was a blessing. And I had, unfortunately, some accidents coming out of college. I was in 2 motor vehicle accidents 6 months apart. So teaching lessons and having David send me over to Europe at the time to teach was the best thing going. And so it's led me to this point. So as I say, the playing days finished, and just happy to be in the industry in the position I am. So
very good.
Fantastic. Cool. Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. Let's go over to another countryman in Canada, actually. Hey, Steve. How you doing, mate?
Good, Gav. Thanks, man. Hey, Sean. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Very good, man. Very good. Congrats on all your success. It was great to see another Irishman once we started getting involved in this Leadbetter certification. So somebody so high up in the rankings. So congrats, man. Really proud of you, fellow countryman.
Appreciate it.
I found I've been lucky enough over the last couple of years to go visit some of the top teachers in the world, and I found defaultedly when I come home I kind of start teaching a little bit like them, and I also have to catch myself a little bit from falling into that. With the experience that you've had and working with David for so long, was there a point that you kind of formulated your own philosophies on the golf swing? And I know we still keep learning every day for sure, but was there a point where you went, okay, well, I kind of think this is the way I preference people to swing? And when you did you find that differed in any way to David's view on golf swings?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because I would say I was at an event in Hawaii at the Hawaii Open, and at the time Jimmy Johnson, who caddies for Justin Thomas, was Charles Howell's caddy. And it was funny, Charles said to me walking down the fairway, this is an odd question, and it sort of tying it back to what you're asking. He said to me, how would you fault David as a teacher? And sort of Jimmy's looking at me sort of with bated breath, what was I going to say? And so, that was a moment where I go, I would say Charles, because he worked with Charles from age 11 and really springboarded his career onto the tour. I said, David probably cares for the likes of you and every other student he teaches to a fault. And so going back to your question, I would say watching David teach, some of the things that I would do when I assisted him, like you're saying, you go to maybe a seminar, perhaps Butch or anybody gives a lesson, any instructor, it could be John Jacobs back in the day, and you're sort of influenced by their approach. And so one of the things David told me in my apprenticeship was, don't teach like me, come up with your own style. But to that end, assisting him for 10 years, it was difficult. I really had to step back. And so when I would prep a student for him, I would actually come up, I'd force myself to think, okay, if I had to give this tour player or this amateur, what was going to be my ABC here in terms of, adjustment, affecting the consistency and solidness of the strike, and reverse engineering that back into setup changes and or whatever swing action changes, body motion changes. I would think to myself, okay, what I would write down my couple of things in my notes. And so a lot of times they overlapped with David, but definitely his approach was maybe different than mine in getting to that end goal of consistency. But I always felt like I got more and more confident that I was going to the right areas, being a good detective, and finding those causality to symptom to effect. So, cause and effect. And so that helped me a lot. And so it really is important. I think I have taken so much from so many instructors that have come before me, whether it's, folks that focus more on the kinematic sequence, folks that focus on pressure, people that are, very big on, say, club action and club face, Andy and Mike with stack and tilt. So all of these people have influenced me. And so the person in front of me, then I'm able to go to a locker, maybe do a bit of testing with them, watch them play, listen to them about their goals and what have you, and then formulate what I feel is an approach that's going to fit them. And so that goes back to David's point. Hey, teach your own style to the person in front of you. Don't teach exactly how I would. And so I think that's important for you then, to expand your knowledge as much as you can, so you can sort of pluck out of the database of improvement those tips and drills that are going to have the biggest lasting effect on that client. And least we forget, look, most of the recreational players we teach, don't put the time grafting on the range. Get them making swings at home. Some of them have more sophisticated setups than others, but I can't tell you how much success I've had getting my amateur players to take accountability by sending in videos of them doing their homework at home, no ball, getting their form right, so then they don't have to be so technical when they're out on the golf course. So they're getting reps done, they're getting that unconscious improvement, getting more permanent at home without the ball. Because as you know, hey, they take a great lesson, you give them some good clarity, but they don't actually practice. And so they get to the course, and guess what? The old DNA shows up as soon as they get tight on the first tee. But back to your question, look, I mean, yeah, I think sometimes you sort of, I refer to it, sometimes I might say, oh, I gave a Mike Bender tip there, might be more golf machine, whatever centric, or I gave a John Jacobs type lesson there. I changed, it's sort of like you think of who sometimes I get, I don't really, I guess I don't really overly think it anymore. I just feel like I've got enough in the toolbox to maybe help that person in front of me. And so I wouldn't say, you've got to be careful not to pigeonhole yourself into one methodology, which it sounds like you've sort of figured out. Yeah. And then the more tools you have available, and the more, if you look at, what is it, YouTube has over 7 million golf tips on it, or golf related. It's like, okay, well, they're all good, but we don't need to give the whole medicine cabinet to the student in front of us, right? It might be just a simple approach, and you sort of, you get them to see point A to where you're going to take them to point B. And once they have that clarity and they feel your confidence, I think that's when they know, okay, we'll buy into this. So that's a great question. Very good. Because that, as I say, David really, if I had to teach like he did, I'd drive myself nuts. And he said the same about his first club was in Chicago, and the membership director said, we want you to give John Jacobs lessons to our membership. And that was in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s. So when John Jacobs was renowned. And so he was like, he said it drove him nuts in the first few weeks. He said, to hell with this. He said, I might be influenced by John Jacobs, but I don't have to give a John Jacobs lesson per se, exactly as he would. But you take from all the the resources you have and the templates that have come before us with the great teachers, and come up with a simple, clear program for the player in front of you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Oh, pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, that's such great advice, that, Sean. Just, you never stop learning, do you? And, you get some of the creative coaches out there pushing out their own views on things, and it's all great information. We can learn from that as coaches. And our skill as coaches comes into accessing the right piece of information to say at the right time in the right way. And that's what you guys have in spades. So yeah, that's a great, that was a great answer to that question. I think we need to go to Hawaii now and just check in with Renee. Hi, Renee, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you. This is a great session. Thanks, Sean, for your time.
Hey, Renee, it's great to have you on. It's lovely to hear from you.
Thanks. Thank you. Just a question dealing with junior golfers, and when you're taking them, your thoughts on taking them from certain yardages that they, should be playing from. We're talking like maybe 8 to 14-year-olds. And what are your thoughts as, they're talented juniors, but moving them back to certain tee boxes, so you're increasing their yardage?
Right. So, Gavin can certainly expand upon this as well. But for me, most of those kids are certainly from that 8 to 12 there, Renee, because they're going to be more typically, depending on obviously their growth and maturity, but typically we're going to have them in that US Kids events for the most part, correct?
Correct.
And so I tend to use that as a baseline. Look, US Kids is sort of that standard up until they really hit their growth spurt. Typically the girls maybe a little bit earlier than the boys, but certainly up to 12, maybe 13. I love the US Kids format in terms of how they do the age group, the 9 holes versus 18, local yardage versus regional versus Pinehurst World Championship. So you've got 3 templates there. I use that a lot with that demographic of junior, and so that's very helpful. If I've got a less skilled junior, I'm going to stay more in that local yardage and really develop their wedge game and putting. Make sure they're solid chippers, pitchers, comfortable getting out of the sand, obviously tidy with their putting. And then start to build from that confidence, build them back into the fairway and obviously off the tee and so forth and so on. So I like that US Kids yardage. And as they start to, sometimes you get some of the kids you work with and they're just absolute rock stars. Maybe they've, their athleticism and length lends itself to them maybe playing at a slightly yardage. But I'm in no rush at that point. I really think light clubs, short distances, fun, fast, all of these words we're using at the moment, those are key for their development. I've had a recent story I can give. I had an 11-year-old and the parents entered, and she's small by 11 standards, quite small, looks more like a 9-year-old, but an absolutely model golf swing, very tidy with her wedging and putting. That said, the dad had been entering her into hurricane events in the 13 to 15 age group. And I asked her, the obvious was, I said, well, what kind of scores did you shoot? And her, sort of 81 to say 84, which given the yardage was actually pretty respectable. And I said, what do you shoot at your local events up in New Jersey? In the 9 holes and 18, and she shot 69, 68, 67, 70, 71, what have you, and most of the time breaking par. And I said, which one is more fun for you? And she said the US Kids yardage. And so I had to educate the parent at that time that there will be a time and a place for this young girl to develop. She'll continue to develop, she'll get faster, she'll get stronger, she'll move the ball further, but we don't want to teach them to enjoy shooting or not enjoy shooting scores that they know they can shoot better scores on a shorter yardage. So for me, for me, keeping the yardage under control is important, and then weaning them into maybe more distance yardage as they develop. And again, that's on a very case-by-case basis. And rarely do you get a Michelle Wee, as you know. I mean, meeting Michelle at 13 and watching her hit the ball was just an anomaly. I'd never seen it before. You know, the driver, the forearm stayed in the air close to 200 yards. It was a blade, and I was like, that's really an outlier. And even then, we'd have to look back at Michelle's career and say that there was too much too early. And, you know, something to be said maybe about Tiger's development, winning at all the junior levels, winning at the amateur and collegiate level, and then having that foundational piece to then go to the tour. And so, yeah, US kids at that age group you're specifying, say 8 or 9 up to 12, 13. I go off that yardage. It's helped me a lot, and it's helped educate the parents that I work with. And you really have to get them to buy in, because a lot of parents, when they see early success, they want to go to those back tees too early, and it doesn't always pan out. Rarely does it pan out consistently. So build their confidence, keep them having fun, and you know, they'll progress, they'll grow. It happens.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome, Renee. Great to catch up.
You too.
That's great advice, Sean. I think one thing I'll just add to that is I don't like messing with the yardages that they should be playing. I think you're absolutely right in what you say, but I like to maybe take their driver out the bag and have them play the same yardage golf course, because that adds another dynamic to it. You know, playing without any woods, perhaps. You know, we want to encourage athleticism and speed, and I think it's all part and parcel of having to play longer clubs into the greens as well. You know, and they don't feel like they're under any more stress because the course is longer, but you know, they clearly have to be better with the longer clubs.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you could get a player that he's feeling like, hey, I'm going out every time shooting hot shot scores, and then he or she, as you say, you take out the driver, maybe the 3-wood, and they've got to hybrid it off the tee. And so now they've got to figure out, as you say, going in with something longer, maybe hybrid. So that's another good game. Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
Yeah. And actually, you know, the favorite game that the guys and girls I used to coach at college was, well, certainly the guys to an extent, was that they played off the forward tees in practice. You know, it was designed to be a birdie fest, but it just changed it up. And you're right, they loved playing off the shorter yardage. It was just so much fun. You could be so attacking, but you had to be a little bit more accurate for sure.
Absolutely.
And you know, it just comes down to the creativity of the players and the kids that you're trying to coach at the time, and don't be scared to change it up. And if you can, in a casual setting, you know, play them off forward tees, take some clubs out, then go ahead and crack on and do it. I think it's a cool way to put a different perspective on it. But look, it's 8:01 here in the UK and just gone 3 o'clock. Sean, you're the hardest working coach I've ever met in my life. You're an animal on the lesson tee. You're probably going to go out coaching this afternoon. Look, I just want to say on behalf of everybody, thank you so much for your insights into who you are as a coach, you know, what's brought you to this point. It's absolutely fascinating. You're a beacon that we look up to and aspire to. So thank you so much. Good luck at Kiowa next week. I'm going to put my 30 shillings on. I think everybody else needs to go and put their money on Patrick Reed as well. But on behalf of everybody, Sean, thank you so much, and look forward to catching up with you all next week on Wednesday for Under the Hat. So take care, everyone. Thanks very much. Cheers, Sean.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you.